Good afternoon and welcome to my video presentation for week one. Um, in this video discussion, I'm going to be addressing professional learning communities and how they can work to create a mission, vision, values, and goal statements for a school. For the purposes of this video discussion, I will be presenting as if I'm presenting to staff, uh, various staff working in my school. Um, so with that, I guess I will begin here. Uh, so again, I'd like to welcome you. Thank you for coming to this presentation here. Before we get started, I do want to just start with a little bit of humor, as I think that always sets a positive tone. And especially with current situation, teaching in this pandemic, I don't think we can have enough humor to make our job seem a little bit more enjoyable as it is crazy and chaotic a lot of the times. So I'm sure many of you can relate to this if you indeed have students in person at all. I know in our school we're currently working um, with a hybrid. We have students in our building every day, and I think a lot of teachers can associate with this cat here. And I think this is fitting as we're moving into winter here, talking about forecast. Today's forecast, if you're teaching in hybrid model or distant learning or fully in person, I'm sure you can relate. We're going to have periods of patchy frazzlement through the morning, followed by increasing frazzlement toward late afternoon. And lastly, teaching during this pandemic does cause headaches, I'm quite certain. So there's a picture of some of the headaches, and down below, this is probably how many of you are feeling right now. Um, Anyhow, with that in mind, I am hoping that we can, or I can add some clarity, help with the direction that we're going in today's meeting here, and hopefully that will minimize some of the headaches that some of you might be feeling, or uh, help alleviate some of that forecasted frazzlement. So ultimately, we're looking at today here, Spirit Valley High School. Who are we? What defines us? How would folks across town describe who we are? What does it mean to be a graduate, a Spirit Valley High Eagle graduate? What is that? Uh, this is something that we're going to look into. We're going to talk a lot about that, spend a lot of time delving into this. And keep in mind, this is not a quick one and done approach. It's going to be a big investment commitment by many players here. And so this is just a very start. Um, so for today here, we're going to be focusing on two main items here. We're going to be talking a lot about what is a professional learning community, what are they, talking about the three big ideas, who makes up a PLC, what are the four critical questions a PLC must ask about student learning, and then we'll see how that fits into driving our development for in mission, vision, value, and a goal statement for our school here. And why do we need these? How do we start? And how does the PLC drive this effort? So hopefully this will present a little more clarity in the direction that we are going. So before we get too far here, I'm just going to use a definition of a PLC, which is given by Mr. Everett in an online publication, the Superintendent Association publication here. And he defines a PLC as a community of persons who share similar goals, practices, beliefs, interests, and value systems, and who act strategically, cohesively, and collaboratively to accomplish one or more desired objectives with a clear focus on student learning. So that brings us into what are the three big ideas of PLC? And there are three main foundational concepts that make up a successful PLC. And probably the biggest one of the biggest ones is focusing on student learning. A lot of times when we look at school improvement, uh, teacher improvement, all of that, a lot of focus can be put on um, instruction and how we teach. But a PLC really shifts that focus from a um, instructional perspective, a teaching perspective on how to improve that. So from that perspective to student learning, how do we affect student learning? How do we create more student learning? How do we do all that? So the focus is always driven by student learning. Okay. And we have to go into the understanding that all students in our school have the ability to learn. All students inherently can learn and are high achieving. And we're going to keep that focus on the students. Later on in the presentation, I'm going to get into talking about how um, we can use 4 critical questions to really hone in on our student learning here. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Second big idea or foundational concept of a PLC is to build a collaborative culture. And when we're talking about a PLC, a working PLC to help drive the development of a school's mission and vision, we really want to be strategic in who those players are and to create a collaborative uh, working culture. Um, we all know that students do better when teachers, also all the members of the school community are working together. So for a PLC to be effective, we need to create a collaborative culture. And in this situation when we're trying to create a mission and a vision and all of that, we need to develop relationships, work together. And in this, it's important to think about strategically who should those stakeholders be. Obviously, we think teachers, school leaders, but we also want to include other support staff in the school, whether it be custodial staff, uh, paraprofessionals, student input. We want to let students have a voice, and then of course we want to include community members um, and use them. And thirdly, I guess I'm covering up that, but the um, third foundational concept of a PLC is to focus on results. We need to really uh, figure out how effective are we being. All right, if we're focusing on student learning, we're working collaboratively. Uh, how are how do we know if we're actually gaining that learning with students? So we have to um, develop tools, programs, procedures, all of that to measure that success and to focus so we know where we're going in the direction that we're headed. So those are the 3 big ideas of PLC: focus on student learning, build a collaborative culture, and then focus on the results so that we know if we're achieving um, student learning. So I spent some time talking about the 3 foundational concepts or big ideas that are crucial to a successful PLC. And we're going to use those 3 big ideas as we develop our mission, vision, values, and goals for our school. Mission. Uh, this is the why. Why do we exist? Why does our school exist? Why is Spirit Valley High School here? What is this fundamental purpose? And in thinking about that too, we need to think about who are we serving and what do we wish for them to accomplish? Um, and how will we proceed in doing that? And this mission is really going to clarify, hone in on what our priorities are. Um, and once we kind of have a mission, that will lead us to our vision. And our vision is really, we need to think about if we are living up to the mission of our school, the vision is the what. What are we becoming? So if we're successful in our mission, if we look 3 to 5 years down the road, how will people describe our school? So that's the vision statement. Uh, that's where we're thinking about the future. Um, what does our school look like if we're accomplishing our mission? This vision really gives us that direction that we need. And again, this is going to be a lot of you know, driven by the mission and everyone coming up with ideas and thinking about what all of this really does mean and coming to a consensus on that. The um, values of a PLC, or in this case, the values of our school community here, is the how. How are we behaving to accomplish our mission? Um, what are the collective commitments of each member of our community? And these values are really our guiding behavior. These values could be things such as respect. They could be, the value that we place on relationships among all school community members, responsibility, things such as that. Things that are really fundamental to accomplishing our mission. And lastly, um, for a successful PLC, we need to have goals. And in creating a mission, vision of a school, we need to have goals associated with them. These really are checklists to know how we're doing. How's our journey on our mission going? Are we getting to where we want to be? What are some targets and timelines? These goals really, really help us establish those priorities of what we want with the student learning. Again, we got to keep that student learning at the forefront of our minds. Um, so these are our goals. Um, this is what we want students to accomplish. Things like that. And in doing these goals, we want to, keep in mind that we want the goals to be the SMART goals, which are specific, measurable, attainable, results oriented, and timely or time bound. Um, and these all really provide us clarity and give us good feedback on if we're accomplishing what we do. And then this allows us to adjust accordingly. If we're not getting to where we want to be, maybe we need to step back, reassess, and change. So it's always that continuous improvement. Are we living up to our mission? Um, and when we're developing all of these uh, areas within our document for our school, the mission, values, goals, all of those, we really need to have a guiding factor here. And this is kind of where school leadership enters in. And the community, everyone has a voice, and the PLC has autonomy in coming up with this, but this is where our school leadership helps guide us. So it's kind of, um, we assist in that. But yet the PLC group has the autonomy in developing this mission. It's totally a collaborative, again, going back to the big ideas of collaborative. And this is where we want to keep in our forefront of our minds is what is our district strategic plan? Let's review that when we're thinking about that. Are we aligning our school with that? Um, also, um, what what is important to us? What do we value as a school? Uh, what are the 21st century learning or the 21st century skills? Are those what we want our students to accomplish? Are we thinking about the world's best workforce, creating students for that? Um, and we also want to think about, you know, I would I would encourage us to think about what are some of those transferable goals from our content specific courses. What are those? How can we create goals that transfer into the world after high school? Um, and they might be referred to as also deep learning. These are like skills that are beneficial. We can think about like collaboration, effective communication, um, self, uh, our desire to be a life learner, developing resilience, that fear of failure, taking responsible risks, all of those. So when we're thinking about goals, we don't want to be content specific, but we want to think about, the transfer goals or what are goals or skills our students can carry into the adult world. So this brings us to our four critical questions that PLC must ask to assure student learning. Again, this really is going to guide the student learning aspect, and this is going to help drive that mission and vision. And I previously talked about this on the prior slide. What are those long-term goals that we have for our students? That's going to be part of our mission and our vision. And these four questions um, are really paramount to a PLC because we have to be student driven. So we really need to ask ourselves these questions. What specifically do we expect all students to learn? Again, is it, are we driven by state standards? Are we looking at, some of those 21st century skills, developing a student who can serve in the workforce, be college ready? What are those? And then also we want to think about those transfer goals, such as, communication, um, resiliency, all of those things too that I previously talked about. Maybe it's uh, becoming a lifelong learner, all of those. So we want to think more than just a specific content area, like what within those content areas can students take with them to be a better citizen? Um, how are we going to know? Second question, how will we know when each student has learned what we expect them to learn? Again, this is where having goals is going to be very important. And we're going to come up with creative assessments. How are we knowing this? This is where we have to be creative, not just rely on standardized tests or testing. And then what are we using for our formative or summative assessments? And this should be continuous so that we can adjust and go. Um, and number three question, how are we going to respond when students are having difficulty in learning or in meeting the mission or in helping us achieve our vision? How are we going to respond? What are those interventions? What are our behavioral interventions? Um, what are our tier one, tier two supports for academics and behaviors? Uh, how long are they going to be? These really have to be defined and created in a way that's easy to use and to implement. And again, we have to be able to continually assess, going back to number two, are these interventions working? Are we helping these students that are having difficulty? And then number four, we really have to ask ourselves too, how do we respond when students are demonstrating that they have learned? Um, this brings up a big question. If you have students achieving already, meeting those goals, doing what we expect, how are we going to enrich these students? We don't want to hold them back uh, and stifle their learning. We want to enhance, enrich. What things can we do to advance learning of those students? Because we always know there's students that um, are higher achievers. So we want to make sure that we are capitalizing and enhancing those student learning. And that's where we got to really think about our enrichment activities. How are we doing that? So this comes back to, again, the big three items of a PLC. Um, when we're creating a vision, mission, values, and the goals for our school and creating it in a statement, we need to really keep the three big ideas in mind: focus on student learning, build a collaborative culture to develop those, and then really focus on the results. Those three things have to be the driving. And when we are talking about the specific student learning here, we really need to keep these four um, questions in mind. So as we move into developing our own vision, uh, mission, and value and goal statement for our school here, we're going to use all of that as our guiding force. Um, and again, I just want to say this is just a very tip of the start of what we're going to be diving into here. So right now, I just want to let that saturate, and we will revisit this. And what we're going to do is start looking at some mission and vision statements of other schools, and really critique them to see if these statements use those four questions to guide in those. Were those big three ideas present. And we'll really look into that. And I think we'll be able to start seeing what good mission statements and vision statements look like versus ones that are not so good. Uh, so we're going to use really these four questions and the big three ideas of the PLC to drive us to come up with a mission and a vision statement that we are proud of as our school. And lastly, I'm just going to share my reference page for those of you that are really curious where a lot of this information came from. Um, and with that, I think this wraps it up. Thank you.